We're halfway through 2021 and 16 months into the pandemic. What's happening? Ted's here to discuss it, and we're going to do that starting right now.
This is Debt Free in 30. Here's your host, Doug Hoyes.
Back on March 21st, 2020, I'm sure you remember that, we aired our first of many COVID update shows. It was episode number 290.
Is that when we were out in the hall?
Exactly.
Wow, I do remember that.
We were sitting in the lobby because the building was closed, and we've done a whole bunch of episodes since then. Of course, there was the episode number 291, dealing with creditors, which I recorded at my house. The sound was terrible. And then Ben Rabideau was on in April. The Vultures Are Circling, episode number 295. We recorded that downstairs.
Oh, yes, I remember that.
In the construction zone on our main floor. And, of course, the construction is now all done. That's how long ago it was. Episode 296 with Blair and Marka Wetlaufer talking about collection agents and what's happening with COVID. That was a huge show. Tons of views on YouTube. An update show with Scott Terrio, and on and on and on it goes. So here we are. We are recording this at the end of June 2021. This will air Canada Day long weekend.
How exciting.
So what is, in your view, the general mood right now in the populace? Before we get to numbers and everything, what's actually happening out there?
Well, let's use a technical term. I think people are just about fed up. They've had enough. And it's not that their focused anger is on anyone in particular. It's just a level of frustration. How else do you describe that? Maybe, I guess anger is the right word.
Yeah, I think anger.
Most people have had enough.
Yeah, I think anger is the right word. I mean, we've been in this a long time, and the plan keeps changing. Right. It was 2 weeks to flatten the curve, and that was 16 months ago. And I think
how flat did the curve get? Let's not have that conversation.
Yeah. I mean, it's frustrating because you want to get on with your life. You want to.
Well, the aspect of it's something that's completely beyond everyone's control. And those are the things that just dig at you the most. Yeah.
Well, and I think it is now universally accepted by everyone that the government of all levels, federal, provincial, municipal, and worldwide, did a lousy job of this. I don't think there's anybody saying, they really
Unless
nailed
you're
it.
New Zealand. Apparently they were pretty good.
Yeah, well,
because they closed the country.
That's right. You live on an island and you're nailing it. But and I realize some of that's revisionist history because, in hindsight, of course, it's easy to see what you should have done.
Yep.
But I don't know. I think there's still a whole bunch that could have driven people crazy. So I agree. I think we're at the 5 stages of grief. We're at the anger stage now, which is why as things start to open up, people are rushing out to actually do stuff.
That's right.
Which kind of makes sense because the weather's actually good too. So
I think there's huge pent up demand just to get out of the house, and which means they're going to start spending money and doing other things.
Well, so let's talk some numbers here then.
Okay.
So and you're doing this without cue cards or notes because I think the shows are way better if we're just winging it. So and I think
we're more likely to be sued if we're just winging it.
Well,
but that's fine.
We can edit it out later. We're not doing this live,
right?
So, and I'll put some charts up on the screen for those of you who are watching on YouTube. But the household savings rate, which is something we talked about on previous shows. So prior to the pandemic, it was essentially zero.
Right.
We really weren't saving anything. And that goes back years and years and years.
Yep.
In the second quarter of 2020, so exactly a year ago, it spiked up to 27%. And the first quarter of 2021, because of course we don't have the second quarter yet, it's not over as we're recording this, it dropped back down to 13%, which is still a massive number compared to the past.
Right.
So why did it spike up is question number one. Yep. And then what do you think the future holds for that particular metric?
Well, so the first thing everybody needs to understand that this is a short-term rate because no long-term rate would fluctuate that much in that sort of period of time. So that means in the second quarter of last year, people weren't able to spend their money. So if you can't spend it, I guess you're saving it. I don't think it's any more complicated than that. And as things have adapted to this new reality, people are able to save more, spend more. So not as much as they used to be able to spend. So we're not back to that zero savings rate, but I think it's coming. So we had to save all our money right at the beginning. A year later now, we are saving half the rate that we did in March of last year. I think by Christmas, we'll be back to zero.
Well, and you're right. There's 2 reasons for it. One reason is I can't physically go outside and buy anything. I can't go on a vacation. I can't do anything. So if I'm not spending the money, well, I'm either paying down debt or I'm saving it. The other side of that, though, is I'm saving because I'm really worried about the future.
And do you think that was part of it?
Well, I think it's very important, and we're going to drive this point home over and over throughout this podcast. Every human being is not the same.
Right.
And so for us to sit here and pontificate, oh, well, here's what happened because this is how all human beings think is ridiculous.
The law of averages isn't a real law. It's just the way things work.
Well, yeah, exactly. And you're right. Averages are almost meaningless.
Yep.
So, okay, on average, the river is 4 feet deep. Can you walk across it?
They're good for showing trends.
Yeah, and that's kind of what we're looking at. So I think there were some people at the start of the pandemic who said, okay, you know what? I don't know how long this is going to last. I don't know if I'm going to lose my job. Right. So I'm pulling in my horns. I'm going to save as much as I can because I might need it to pay the rent next month. There were other people who, as you said, well, I don't have anything to spend it on, so I'm saving.
Well, how do you want to factor in the fact that once the government benefits started rolling, they were much more generous than a lot of people actually had for their income?
Yeah. And again, you cannot pick one person and make them representative. If you were working as a, I don't know, whatever it was you were doing.
A waiter, dishwasher, food diversion.
Maybe it was you weren't getting your full hours or whatever. You were bringing in $1,500 a month and CERB kicked in and you were bringing in $2,000, your cash position actually improved.
Right.
And if your spouse was in the same position, then your household income improved. And if you didn't have to spend any money on gas for the car and everything else, then it was considerably better. But you also realized it was a temporary situation. Right. So that did lead some people to save money. Now, the other side of it, of course, you hit spending. Mm-hmm. So credit card liabilities. And again, I'm getting these numbers from Stats Canada, and I don't want to look at the specific numbers. Let's look at trends because that's really what is more important. This is from Stats Canada, liabilities of households in, millions of dollars. February of 2020, credit card outstanding balances were around $88 billion. By February of 2021, they were down to $73 billion. So a year later.
My wife stopped buying shoes.
And again, that's the question. Why has it dropped? By April, it was around $74 billion. So it's kind of flattened out February, March, April after dropping considerably. So this is what the economists call deleveraging. Right. People have paid down credit cards. Is that really just the inverse of the savings? Is it really the same thing?
I think it is. And again, I'm quite happy to predict that by Christmas, assuming the world continues to open up, we'll be back to the $88 billion.
So your prediction then is that the savings rate, which has spiked way up, is going to go all the way back down to essentially zero.
Yep.
And credit card balances will continue they'll go back to where they were.
I agree. Yep, that's my prediction.
Yeah, and I will disagree with that prediction because otherwise this show would be boring.
Be pretty boring, that's right.
I think that
some people will continue to save.
Yeah, I think some people, a habit takes a few weeks to implement itself.
Yep.
It's now been a year and a half. I think there are some people who will not be going back to the office. They'll be working from home. And as a result, they won't have the transportation costs. They won't have to buy as much office clothing. They won't be, paying for lunches, whatever. So some of that savings will still be able to continue. Now, what number? I have no idea. Right. I don't have the faintest clue. Are we going to go back to close to zero? I don't think so. But is it going to be 1%, 2%, 4%? I don't know.
I think there's a reason that we got to those numbers in the first place. So before the pandemic started, things were getting progressively worse every month for the year and a half before that. I mean, we watched all of that. And I think it's just going to bounce right back because people's memories are short term.
And I get that, and that's what I guess we're going to find out then. So I think that some people will absolutely revert back and in fact will go overboard.
Yep.
I mean, if you haven't had a vacation, outside of your house for 2 years, I mean, what's happening in the summer of 2021, and we just have been talking to a bunch of people in our network here. Well, I'm going camping this year.
Right.
I don't have to get on a plane. I can drive up north. That's what I'm going to do for my vacation this year. But by the fall or the winter, you know what? I haven't been to
Don't get a lot of camping in Canada in February.
That's right. It's less fun. So by that point, it's like, you know what? I've got these savings. I've got some room on my credit card. Yep. Let's go. And so I might go on an even better vacation than what I would have gone on before.
Maybe.
I mean, the other numbers, which I'm not going to spend too much time on because these are obvious, mortgages. Mm-hmm. Well, guess what? And again, we'll put the graph on the screen. They've just kept going up and up and up and up and up and up.
Well, that's because housing prices are really odd. I mean, I'm just waiting for that disaster.
Yeah, and again, at some point, it's got to pull back as to when it's going to be. Who knows? It's a function of many things.
We've been calling for that, though, for years.
Yeah, we have no clue.
The pandemic aside.
Yeah, if interest rates stay low, then I guess house prices can stay high. If they ever switch around, who knows? And, we've done shows on inflation versus deflation, and we'll be talking about that again in the fall. I don't know.
Right.
HELOCs, a little bit bumpier, but they were $250 billion roughly. And again, I'm giving you a specific subset. We're talking chartered banks here mostly. In February of 2019, by April of 2021, they were up to $262 billion.
Which corresponds to the reduction in credit card debt.
Yep.
May have nothing to do with each other.
Well, and again, you can't just look at HELOCs because I can take my HELOC and convert it into a regular mortgage. So the mortgage balances, the amount we owe against our homes continues to go up as the price of those homes continues to go up. So, a lot of moving parts. So what is going to happen in the future? And we've already started contemplating this. Yep. So I was thinking about this the other day. So I'm going to give you my analogy, and you're going to tell me if this is ridiculous or if it's not if it's good or not. So
yes, it's ridiculous.
There you go. You got to listen to it first. Okay. I'll shut his microphone off so he has to listen to my analogy. So I think of COVID sort of the same way as I think of an unexpected thunderstorm. Okay. Mm-hmm. The thunderstorm is the same for all of us, but it depends on your circumstances when it started as to how it impacted you. So if you happen to be out in a field when that unexpected thunderstorm hits, well, you get soaked. There's nothing you can do. Yep. Or might be worse. You might get caught in a flash flood. You might get hit by lightning and be dead. Okay. Right. That's the worst case scenario.
Okay.
The middle ground is, well, I'm walking through downtown when it hits. Okay, I get a little bit wet. I zip into a coffee shop for an hour. I'm delayed for half an hour to my next meeting. No big deal.
Right.
Then there's the final person who happened to be at home when the unexpected thunderstorm hit, and he's sitting there going, boy, my lawn is looking a little dry. I guess I better go out and buy some sprinklers and oh, wait a minute, look. Massive thunderstorm. This is fantastic. I actually benefited from it. So is that not how this has gone? Some people have been totally decimated by it. People have died. You can't get much worse than that.
Yep.
But then at the other end of the spectrum, you've got the person who owned a house. It's gone way up in value, who's been redeployed to home, saved a lot of money. That's why the savings rate is up.
Yep.
Is that not the way it's been, that it's been a different impacts on everybody?
Oh, yeah, of course. So the analogy is okay. Yeah, I can even live with the thunderstorm analogy and the lightning. That's all right, because I can't think of one that's more appropriate. Snowstorm because we're Canada, but
yeah, okay, there you go. I don't know how you benefit by a snowstorm unless you're
already at home.
Yep,
same reason. But anyway, it doesn't matter.
But it's very important to realize that people have different experiences of this,
right?
And so, you and I know people who wear their mask wherever they go. Mm-hmm. It's quite amusing to me because I go for bike rides and runs on the trail near my house, and most people they're out there riding their bikes.
Right.
There are the occasional person who's riding their bike with a mask on, which I've never understood, but okay. Maybe they got allergies. I don't know.
Yeah.
My favorite was the guy on his bike. He had his mask pulled down to his chin, and he's smoking a cigarette. Okay.
He wants to be ready in case he encounters a person and he can't social distance adequately.
I'm totally stunned by that. Going forward, I think one of the things we are going to see that we haven't seen yet is massive tension. Because you've got these two opposing forces, right? You got the guy who got crushed in the thunderstorm and the guy who benefited.
You're talking about this making income inequality worse.
Well, it obviously already has.
Yeah, I'm not sure, actually. In the papers, I thought it had plateaued.
Well,
we'll see, but
I guess we'll see.
Depends on what you look at.
Yeah, the government supports are still there.
Right.
Now, they are
grinding down.
So, but there's no doubt that, some people have benefited far more than others.
Well, just look at the stock market.
Yeah.
Anybody who sold everything last March because there was a horrible crash, I mean, they might as well just shoot themselves in the head.
Probably the wrong decision. Well,
right.
If you owned an asset, you benefited.
Right.
A house, the stock market, crypto. Well, that's a different story.
Let's not talk about crypto.
We can talk about that.
And I'll agree not to bring up payday loans.
There you go. But if you didn't own an asset,
right?
If you were a renter and not a homeowner, well, then you didn't get that benefit.
So let's play with your analogy. So if you were swimming in the ocean as opposed to being on a raft or in a boat, the swimmer's getting damn tired.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
It's a hard road.
Yeah, it's the same ocean.
Yep.
But if you've got a yacht or if you've got a raft or if you've got nothing, then the impact is huge. I mean, I'm thinking even in terms of, okay, so I work in a factory or an office, and I mean, an office would be a good one because we've been working from home,
right?
But now we're gradually bringing people back. And so you got somebody who is very scared about the whole thing and somebody who is much more blasé about it.
Right.
And yet we're going to be sitting in the next cubicle, side by side. So how much tension is that going to create when, I'm sterilizing my workspace every hour and the person next to me, isn't wearing a mask, they're coughing, whatever.
Standing up, looking over the top, telling jokes.
Exactly. How you're doing. And that's going to be, that's a dynamic we haven't dealt with.
Yep.
I mean, we've always been worried about, hey, you've got the flu. I don't want you to give it to me. Why don't you stay home?
Right.
But now it's like, oh, maybe you've got something much more serious. Can you see that causing people to be a lot more stressed out?
And I see stress on different levels. So that's the physical health issue. But there's also going to be, we don't like standing in lines, and we're going to be doing that in the stores for quite a long time. There's supply issues throughout the manufacturing and food chain. So there's all kinds of different stresses that are going to materialize over the next 6 months. Some of them are going to get worse, like the example you just gave. The people that are stressed about their health and are anxious about the guy next to them, well, the more people that are packed in beside them, the more anxious they're going to become. The folks that have got all this pent-up demand and aren't able to satisfy it, so they're going to get stressed out and angry about that. So I think mental health is going to be an interesting issue in the fall.
Yeah, and
I mean, it already is because everyone is angry.
Right. Yeah, we go from whatever angry to some people.
Next?
Yeah, I mean, some people it's like, you know what, I give up. So okay, I've been able to get EI, but now my boss says I have to come back to work.
Yep.
The factory's reopening, the office is reopening, my retail store, my hair salon, but I'm not comfortable going back. Then what happens? Now you raise the issue of income inequality. Well, there you go.
Yeah.
The person who says, I'm not comfortable coming back. I've got to stay home. What about people with kids?
Right.
You understand this.
Mm-hmm.
I got rid of mine. They're not dead. They're just not living at home anymore.
You fed them and they grew.
That's right. And they departed. But I mean, how many people are going to want their kids to go back to school full-time starting the day after Labor Day? I mean, I guess every parent, but how comfortable are you?
Not the ones that are anxious about their health concerns, right? Because I don't think the kids are going to be vaccinated by the fall. I mean, my oldest is because she's over 13. The two younger ones haven't had their first shot yet.
Well, and they actually started vaccinating people under the age of 12? No. So yeah, there's no physical way that young kids are going to be vaccinated. Now, is that an issue? I don't know. How many cases are we going to have in September?
Right.
I don't know. Is there going to be a new variant? I don't know. There's a massive amount of uncertainty. So it seems to me that we've got, again, two competing forces here. On the one hand, you got this pent-up demand, but on the other hand, as you say, you got supply chain issues, but you've also got people who, I'm just not ready to go back to work yet.
Yeah.
And so what do you do as a parent? Do you say, oh, well, I'm going to keep my kids home? Is there going to be a homeschooling option? Is that a thing?
I'm sure there will be next fall because the different school boards seem to have figured that out. I know my kids want to go back to the classroom.
Yeah, because...
So unless there's a compelling reason not to let them.
Right. Well, because, I mean, if you're a kid, you want to hang out with your friends.
Yeah, you want to socialize.
That's the only reason you go to school. I mean, do you learn anything there? I don't know. But as a parent, I'm going to stay off for the summer because there's still going to be some supports. But then when September gets here, what do I do?
Right.
And if there's some kind of outbreak at the school, then do I have to give up my job? Do I take leave? What's my employer going to say? Like,
all issues that we're going to have to address.
And
we'll have to address them. It's not just, this is not some example or hypothetical.
No, this is everybody.
We got a business. We got 100 employees. We're going to have to figure all this stuff out too.
Yep. This is everybody. So how quickly do you see things returning to normal? I mean, maybe things will never return to normal.
Well, normal will be different, right? Normal, if you're on a graph with normal's 0, 0, the middle of the graph, we've shifted the center of the graph one way or the other. And it's too early to tell for sure.
So what then is we don't know. There you go. That's the theme of this show.
That's our educated answer.
Yeah,
we don't know.
We don't know. I mean, it seems to me that over the summer, just like over the summer last year, things will open up.
Yeah, I think this summer there's going to be more pressure to open further, but of course now we've got more vaccinated people, so it's
the risk is
going to
less.
be safer.
Well, and what permanent changes have occurred? So, I mean, those who are watching on YouTube will see that our hair is somewhat disheveled. You're sporting the afro.
That's right. My curls are back,
which you haven't had since you were 18 years old. Will there be people who say, you know what, I don't need to get my hair cut every month like I used to. I managed to go 3 months or 6 months. Maybe I'll just keep doing that.
Well, I'm more concerned that a large portion of that personal service industry is just going to remain underground. Because I know there are people getting haircuts. They're calling their friends or whatever that do this and say, here's $20, come and do it. I think that's going to continue. That the government's going to have a hell of a time getting people back to where they're reporting all of that income.
Yeah, I mean, if I knew how to work some scissors and could cut people's hair, I could have my shop where I'm paying rent and GST and taxes and liability insurance and cleaners and all the rest of it. Or I could say, hey, you know what? I'm going to come to your house and I'm still going to charge you as much as what I charged you in the shop. And I'm going to have some cost because I got to get in my car and drive over there or whatever. But maybe that's actually better. I mean, and if I end up not declaring a lot of it for tax purposes.
Yeah. And how are they going to find out? Right now, we're not in a cash economy, but it's so easy to go back to that for so many of these industries.
And that may be the one reason why we don't go completely underground, because nobody has cash anymore.
I've been carrying the same $50 bill since the beginning of March last year.
Yeah.
Because I carry 50s because I won't break them. I haven't had the opportunity now.
Yep. Yeah. And I carry pennies, which is why I'm way down.
Where'd you find a penny?
That's probably, they don't even make them anymore, I don't think. So that's the only downside to it, that, okay, here you go, here's $20, cut my hair. Well, but nobody has cash.
Right.
So, okay.
You do an e-transfer?
But then e-transfers, I guess they're in a system somewhere.
If anybody ever figures out a way to do it, right? If the government starts auditing bank accounts.
Well, they haven't yet, but it's not that hard to do.
If it was a blockchain transfer, you'd have the complete history.
And
I don't even know what the hell I'm talking about.
But you're not wrong.
Right.
I mean, El Salvador has just said that, hey, Bitcoin is a thing here. It's legal tender starting in the fall. And so they're actually giving every citizen $30 worth of Bitcoin, because they want you to put the app on your phone so you can be using it. And it's essentially kind of like an e-transfer.
Yep.
I go and get my coffee, beep with my phone, boom, off we go. So that's a great way to have an underground economy, I guess, if it's not going through normal channels. No, you are correct. The blockchain does have a record of every transaction. So
I don't pay much attention to that stuff.
But I know that. I guess the point we're making is there are a whole lot of moving pieces here, and the world will look completely different. So, okay, more of an underground economy in certain areas. And then the whole work from home thing, which nobody fully grasps yet because we don't know what.
Yeah, I still don't think that's going to be as much of a thing as a lot of the folks are predicting.
But even if it's 20% of a thing.
Yep. That's 20% more than it was before.
Yeah. And I can certainly see in the big office towers in Toronto, they say, well, okay, you got to be in 2 or 3 days a week.
Yeah, we'll start hoteling.
We're going to have big workspaces, whatever. Well, that means 2 or 3 days a week you're not downtown, which means you're not buying coffee, you're not going to the restaurant, you're not going to the dry cleaners, whatever. So what impact does that have? Does that make more stuff happen outside the city and less stuff happen inside the city? I don't know. I have no idea. So what then is your advice to people in this time of massive uncertainty? Like, what are you supposed to do? I don't know if my job is coming back or not. I mean, as we record this in Kitchener, which is where we are sitting today, you cannot get a haircut. I believe I'm correct in that, in that statement. So, okay, I don't know if my job is coming back. Even when I'm allowed to get a haircut again, will will I? Yeah, will I just, Ted and I will be wearing ponytails for season number 8 in September. You'll want to tune in for that.
Bald spot back here.
Well, that's the ponytail's perfect then. You pull it right over.
The ultimate comb over.
Absolutely. So I don't know if my job's coming back. I don't know if it's going to be better than it was before. Maybe I've got to retrain, do something completely different. Maybe I got to start driving a truck because everyone's ordering stuff from Amazon. That's where all the work is.
We should have bought cardboard box company stock. I'm sure it's gone crazy.
Well, and anything to do with lumber. Yep. So what then is your advice when we have no clue what the future potentially could be?
So the person that's most interested in looking after you is you, right? So you listen to all the people that are telling you these things and try and make an informed decision on what's going to be best for you. And for some folks, that's going to increase their level of anxiety because they're just not comfortable doing that. For others, they may increase the savings rate. That's what you were suggesting earlier, right? They'll change their patterns. I think for most of us, we're going to carry on the way we have always carried on, which is why I think as things open up, people are going to go right back to the habits that they had before. They developed those habits for a reason, and maybe because that's the way they always did it. I think they're going to go back to most of them, and it's just a matter of getting there.
Yeah, and I only agree partially with that. Yep. I think there will be some people will have made permanent changes. And so as we go through this reopening, I think it's incumbent upon all of us to say, okay, this was horrible.
Right.
And I never want to go through it again. But what was actually positive about it? Oh, I learned to cook. I learned to cut my own hair. I learned to, make my own coffee in the morning. I mean, even something as simple as that. And you don't drink coffee because you're wired enough as it is. And I'm not a huge consumer of it, but, I put the pot on every morning and that's what we drink.
The wife would run out and she'd buy Starbucks every day.
Yeah.
Right? She doesn't do that anymore.
Right. And so how much does it cost to go to, and we're not sponsored by that company, so we're not going to mention their
Timmy's
name,
or anyone else.
Or anybody else. But how much does it cost to do that? I don't know, a couple of bucks, $5. I don't know what you spend when you go to one of those places.
Well, we've seen it in people's budgets that have to submit them to us, right?
Oh, yeah.
They easily spend $20, $30, $40 a week on that sort of thing.
Oh, I remember one.
They don't even realize it.
I remember one guy who was spending $500 a month at the coffee shop because he'd go in the morning, he'd go for his morning coffee break, breakfast, lunch, whatever. And he decided to stop doing that for a while and he couldn't believe the amount of cash he had.
Right.
And so, that to me is an example of a potential permanent change. While I've been making coffee for a year and a half, it's not that hard. You put it in the machine, you push the button.
Right.
Like it's not that hard really. And I can have my big thermos and drink as much as I want. Those to me are the kind of changes that are probably permanent now.
Yeah, see, let's keep on this coffee thing. I think that's one of those little luxuries that everybody thinks they can afford. And it's a decision that gives people the illusion that they've got control. And so I think you're right that they've gotten used to doing it at home, but I think slowly they're going to start buying it at Starbucks or Timmy's or wherever again, because they just like doing it.
Yeah, and I guess that's the question. Why does someone do that? I mean, I remember the days when I go to Toronto, I take the train in and I'm walking from Union Station up to our office at Yonge and King, and I go through the underground and there's all sorts of different coffee shops as I go there, and there's always a lineup at all of them.
Busy. Yeah.
They're all busy. And I'm thinking, do I really want to stand in line for 5 minutes? Not about COVID or anything, but I don't have 5 minutes to just stand there and then another minute or two to get my order and everything. And I actually have to pay for it. It's so much easier to just bring my mug with me. So that's a perfect example, though, of how the world may or may not change.
Right. It'll be worth watching.
Yep. And I guess we will see. So my advice then is to take a look at the changes that you've made that were positive,
right,
and see if you can continue on with them. The average person, and averages, of course, we already decided.
We're back to that, yep.
So this is more of a bimodal distribution. and again, here's a question for the listener. How has your weight changed during this episode?
Right.
And the answer is, well, either I'm 20 pounds heavier or I lost 30 pounds.
So how'd you do?
I'm 5 pounds heavier than I was when this started.
So I peaked at 222 and I'm down to 216 now. But it's not nothing to do with COVID. It's just because the weather's nice and I'm outside with the kids again.
You're outside again. And so I think there are, people who took advantage of this and said, hey, I don't have to spend an hour commuting. I can go for a walk.
Right.
I can make healthy food, whatever. But there were other people who was, well, I don't have to leave this chair.
I'll just sit down.
I'm just going to sit and eat. So if you can go back and analyze what happened, pick out the good. And okay, we still got a couple of months before we're kind of quasi sort of open. Well, great. Are there changes I can still make? You hate to go back. You hate to lose the opportunity if you had it.
And I'd be willing to predict that the example you're just talking about is we've got the population. Well, go back to our ocean analogy, right? The poor bugger that's swimming in the ocean that's drowning, the one that's on the raft that's just barely getting by, and the guy in the yacht. So the folks in the yacht are going to follow that advice and they'll make positive changes and things will get better for them. The folks on the raft, hopefully they make positive changes. The guy that's drowning probably doesn't think they've got the ability to make any of these changes.
Yeah, and some of them don't.
Right.
I mean, I get it. If I've got a sick relative that I'm taking care of, if I've got to be home because of my kids, if my job doesn't exist anymore, it's not my fault that my industry disappeared because the government shut it down. So you can't be beating yourself up about what's happened.
And there's no return on that investment. If you beat yourself up, well, okay, that's energy you could have spent trying to solve the problem.
Right. What positive changes can I make? And even if they're just little incremental ones, I mean, okay, fine, go for a short walk every day. That's better than nothing. And if you can do that, then hopefully we improve. So, well, you and I will have one more chat in the month of July before we shut it down for the month of August and come back in September. Going back to school is another classic example of that tension because there's some kids who this is the greatest day ever. I finally get to go back.
Yep.
And there's other kids who loved summer, loved sleeping in and hate going back.
Right.
And you're putting them both together in the same
on the same bus.
The same bus. So that's just the way it is. So there you go. That is what we think is going to happen. We don't know. We really have no idea. But if nothing else, it will be interesting.
Right.
Ted, thank you very much. That is our show for today. Next week, Scott Theriault returns with some outdated financial advice, and we'll tell you why it's outdated and what we think you should do instead.
Right.
So thanks for listening. If you are listening on your podcast app, please subscribe so you get the show every week. And if you're listening or watching on YouTube, then please like, subscribe, share, hit the notification. You know what to do. You know what to do on YouTube. So please do that. It helps get the word out. Until next week, thanks for listening. I'm Doug Hoyes. That was Debt Free in 30.